What up, y'all? Sorry I lied to you about being here Wednesday. I totally just didn't get to do our post at all on Wednesday. I was busy preparing for the fast. It always sneaks up on me. But yeah, Yom Kippur was great. The Kabbalah Center, like, it was same as Rosh Hashanah, like such a sacredness and a seriousness and a solemnness this year of just prayer for the world. I mean, I think everybody was just holding so much in their hearts, not just even for themselves this time around, but mostly for the collective and for others. So that was really encouraging. So it was such a big couple of days. I mean, through the fast, it was literally like the whole day I couldn't take my eyes off of the flotilla because they were on the final stretch, approaching the danger zone of where the past ships this year have been intercepted. And so they were getting really close. They were getting close to passing the point that they had reached before. And it was just about sundown that the first boats were starting to they were on the run from the Israeli Navy. And it's so wild being in these times. We're literally like watching a live stream of people trying to outrun a Navy. It was just, I couldn't take my eyes off. It was just breathtaking. And, that's almost the only way you can describe it. So the one ship, it took them about 14 hours to snatch all 30-something ships after the other two had been decommissioned earlier in the trip because of various things. And so there was actually one final ship that made it within 40 nautical miles of the Palestinian coast or the Gaza coast. And the Palestinians could see the ship on the horizon. Like they were just waiting on pins and needles. But that ship did eventually get intercepted. Like they were intercepting them all night and then into the next morning. And so it was in morning light, they could see the distant ship on the horizon and they were like, and they ended up getting that last ship. But the good news, the silver lining is that was the first day in months that the people settled on the beach had been able to fish because they would be shot when they would go out into the water or shot at. So they were able to fish. They were able to go in a little deeper and fish. And so they ate, that day, a fresh catch. And so that was, a big win. Of course, it was like soul crushing for so many because, that we were all just on the edge of our seats, rooting for these people. Even, this is so wild, even Kim Jong-un, I'm always very uncertain that I'm pronouncing his name wrong, one of the world's most feared dictators, has condemned the situation in Palestine and was like for the flotilla and threatened to drop the big one if anything happened to Greta. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this thing is like a fever dream. It is unbelievable, the twists and turns that the world is like dishing up. I'm like, oh my God, I can barely keep up right now. It's so crazy. So that was wild. So I was praying so hard through Yom Kippur, and I had a feeling others were too, just holding the participants in their hearts because we know that they've got to go through this process now and they're going to be held and detained for however long it takes for the attorneys to get them out. And so according to updates, there's been a bit of fuckery but they're all okay, but they haven't been treated very well. And so there are teams of attorneys there that are trying to work around the clock to get them released and to make sure that they're safe and okay. So that's everything I know so far about the latest news. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're all kind of like watching them now because we've used them as an example recently of a demonstration of what the phrase certainty means when we talk about that level of faith. Being that certainty doesn't mean that you have a guarantee. Certainty doesn't mean you have answers. But when you are certain that God has a plan and that you're following where God is pulling your soul, that there's a purpose for it, and that God will be there with you through it, and so we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. But our cards, our weekend, I know I wanted to make a video for us Wednesday, but I just didn't get to. And then after my 25-hour fast, I hadn't had a lick of anything to eat except for my sip of wine and bread for the kiddush, the basically communion. And so I went over to my sister's for her dinner party, and on the way there I was thinking, man, I'm craving chili. Chili sounds good. And guess what? I walked in and she was making chili. So that was nice. All right, so let's get into our reading. So we are here for our weekend reflection message, where usually it ties, in with all of the lessons of the week. And I know we haven't really been on our usual schedule, but either way, this speaks definitely to the collective, and regardless, we're always learning and always experiencing things throughout every day, every week, never ends. So from the Radiant Sun Oracle, we have the card, the Sun in Taurus, which is acquisition, followed by Jupiter in Capricorn, which is control, followed by the Sun in Leo again. So remember, guys, last week when we had the Sun in Leo card, and I can't remember what other cards were with it, but I was like, Clash of the Titans, the world's big personalities are going to be coming in to play, and they're going to be shaping some things big time. And just like Kim Jong-un, who weighed in at the last minute, and I'm pretty sure that is maybe why the participants aren't being treated worse than they are. So God works in mysterious ways, right? Even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? Good night. So we've got fortune here. So we've got Leo, the Sun in Leo. Underneath acquisition, we have 8 of Cups. Underneath control, we have King of Swords. And so notice that this is, again, a feminine king. In this particular deck, they just kind of mix it up. So she doesn't necessarily have the traditional male king and a female king, but I kind of still would consider this the same as before, where we think of the feminine mastery of a suit along with the masculine mastery, but we'll get to that sooner or later when we're talking more. So we've got control with the King of Swords. And underneath fortune, we have the devil. The devil. Ugh. All right. So I don't appreciate that the devil in this deck looks like me. I used to have hair that was short, like a short bob, and I was like, well, that's something. But I look like the King of Swords too, so whatever. All right, I'm actually going to pause this and let you guys listen to the audio, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the cards. There are many aspects to the mass awakening that is happening in our global human family right now. One aspect of this is a drastic shift in what we value and what we know to be truly important. I've seen posts lately declaring that people would rather be influenced by individuals like Greta Thunberg than the Kardashians, and I think that says it all. We are reexamining our lives. How we've spent our lives, our finite energy, days, and hours in this life in pursuit of acquiring things of little value. Things that will break down and waste away and blow away with the rest of our corpse dust. We have a desire birthing within us to have a life of meaning, to focus on things of eternal value, the sacrificial love that we show others. Taking for the self alone leads to emptiness, sickness, and death. These are the wages of the sin of missing our life's greatest purpose. We are beginning to see more and more clearly through the fastly thinning veil all the ways our opponent or adversary has tried to deceive mankind and rob us of our true collective spiritual destiny. But we are awake now, and we are learning to develop cosmic sovereignty over our consciousness in a world that spends trillions to beat us into spiritual submission of despair. But we are here to say, no, not today, Satan, not one more day. The second coming of Christ is not a rapture that will absolve us from our divine and human responsibility. The second coming of Christ is coming through each of us that pick up the cross of awakening. That is our redemption. When we go through tribulations, some will be awakened by revelation. And that, my friends, is the rapture. It is the peace within that comes from God's rest in your heart and in your mind. That all the material things we cling to will fall away. But the light that Christ reveals in our soul is eternal and will never be put asunder. Temple stones of marble will crumble, but the temple we build within is untouchable and unstoppable. All right, so I think I have a vague memory of the other day saying that I was going to let y'all listen to the audio, but I might have spaced out in the editing process and I can't remember whether I included it. So what do you want? I'm a mystic. Forgive me. Okay, so acquisition. It's like overall, an acquisition is, first of all, in the grand world stage, what we see right now is an absolute lust for acquiring at any cost. And this is the devil that is plaguing the whole world right now. It is unchecked greed and unchecked desire to receive for the self alone, to receive in a selfish way. Even in benign ways, in our consumerism, there are so many people in this world who feel a deep sense of emptiness. And they don't know why, because they have the career, they have the title, they have the money, they have the house, they have the car that they want. They had a boat, but then it was too much trouble. It was more trouble than it's worth, so they got rid of the boat. And they go on vacations, they have money to go out to eat, and it's like they still aren't happy. They're still not satiated. They're still not satisfied. And it's because they're in pursuit of these empty things. And it's like when we take and we take and we take, it doesn't fill us up. It makes us even more empty and eventually sick and angry and depressed. And we have this spiritual illness that comes over us. And so really the most satisfying life is one of sharing, is one of sacrificial love, is one where when we switch our consciousness, we think, oh, I don't really want to receive just for myself. Yes, there are things that I want, but I know that they're not going to ultimately bring me happiness. But when I can use what I've been given to help others, that is when you get real satisfaction, real fulfillment. And so this disease of greed, we see how it's just taken over the world right now. I mean, like, it's never enough for some people. They won't stop until they've had more and more and more and more. And they get bloodthirsty, and they don't care what it costs. They don't care if it costs human life. They don't care if it's moral or immoral. They understand what they're doing, and they don't give a shit, right? It's like all these real estate developers that bought all the single homes out and are building these crappy, shoddy, overpriced houses crammed on one lot, or those apartment buildings, and they're so overpriced that no one can afford them. They're the ones on my street. They literally look like crap after a couple of years because they're cheap materials. And then these people have paid $500,000 for a piece of shit house it's already started to dilapidate, right? So we can only go so far before the system starts to implode on itself. So we have, in a grand global scale right now, all eyes are on the corruption of the world, and we see the greed, and we see what people will go to acquire, and they will try to do anything they can to keep you under their foot and control everything, to control you. There are systems of slavery that are still alive and well today. They're ways that they keep migrant workers overseas. This happens in the Middle East. They were trying to do it here. They were trying to talk the farmers into doing it here when we were losing all of our farm workers because of the raids, right? And they were like, oh, well, we'll just have it to where your farmer, the owner of the farm, will be in charge of everybody, and they'll, hold on to their paperwork and everything, and you'll ultimately be in charge of the person. That sets the people up to be exploited and stuck here and enslaved. Like, that's literally the foundations of slavery. Because what they do in like Donald Trump had, like, his business model and his overseas hotels is to have migrant workers come there, and they're charged rent for their lodging, and they have to turn over their passports when they arrive. And if they can't make the rent, then they have to buy their passports back. And so basically they know that they're going to underpay them so that they can never keep up with their expenses. So they can't get their passports back. So they're stuck as cheap labor and they can't leave the country. That is slavery. So again, we are looking at all of these entities who are, it starts off as this, there's a spiritual malicious entity that is driving this, and then the people are vessels for either evil or light, right? And so when you have unchecked greed, and then you have unchecked lusts, it's like, oh, you're a demon magnet. They're going to take over, and they're going to use you to push you to see how far you'll go in the name of evil, in the name of take, receive, receive, receive. So we've got the devil that's influencing us at all times. Like, our human destiny, basically, we come here to earth, and there is an adversary here that is whispering in our ear, and it's trying to steer us towards our darker side. We are the ones that take evil action. The devil didn't make us do it. The devil suggested that we do it. And then some people delighted in the energy that they got from their evil deeds, and they grow darker and more twisted, right? So the devil over here is underneath our fortune, our collective fortune altogether as a human destiny. And it is each individual, it's up to us to wake up and to decide, no, I'm voting against this. I'm saying no to my temptation. I'm saying no to the animalistic part of myself that wants to take and to, survive at all costs, or not survive at all costs, but you know what I mean? Like, I want to thrive. I don't care who it affects, right? And so we have the potential to fall into that kind of consciousness, right? But it's our free will. It's our free choice. God gives us our free will. He does not force us into the light. He does not force us to be channels of good. There's no coercion in real spirituality. If you have been forced into believing something through fear, then it's not genuine. It's not authentic, right? If you're forced into a marriage, and then you don't love the person, it's not real love, right? It's just, you're just forced into a marriage. So too, it is with our relationship with God. If we feel forced into it because we're afraid to go to hell, that's the only reason why we're believers, we get saved, then it's not real. It's not genuine. You don't love God. You're not trying to be more like Christ, or you're not trying to add goodness into the world. You're just trying not to go to hell. So then again, you're just receiving for the self alone, which is why so many people are like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so religious and I'm still not happy. I'm still not satisfied. I still don't feel the presence of God in my life. It's because there's no heart in it. There's no life in what they're doing. It's just performative, right? So we are waking up past that, though. The collective, most of the human family on earth, I mean, we see the footage. If you have the algorithm that's tapped into what's going on, people all over the world are standing up and speaking out and taking on, other people's pain and suffering, and they're standing in solidarity because we want something of meaning. We want something of value. We want to, like for instance, so many of the new age people are starting to come around to Jesus because they're like, no, actually, Christ is exactly what we were into and what we've been looking for. We just didn't like the church. And then yet so many people that have been all churchy and, always showing up, but their heart's never been in it. Or maybe it has, but they just were blindly following someone who was just telling them what to think. And so now this is the first time that they've woken up to the disillusionment that, oh, wait, now I can't really trust the church. Like I thought I could trust the church. And they don't understand. They're leaving their Christianity. And it's like, no, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a difference between Jesus and Jesus's message and the church, the organized church. Jesus didn't like organized religion. He was out here trying to reform and the whole temple mentality that the temple owned, your spiritual relationship with God and that you had to go there to worship. He was trying to get away from that. But yet the organizers after Jesus, was crucified and resurrected and ascended, and the ministry was left to the disciples and the apostles. It's like all the organizing people who wanted to hold on to the status quo got in, and they were like, all right, if everybody's gonna be Christian, I guess we'll just put our same old system back together and we'll just create another church. But with the same structures and the same pitfalls, right? It's the same thing all over again. So you see, the church is not the same as being a true Christian. So I think that when you understand that you can divide and separate the two and they're not mutually exclusive, then you're free. That's it. And nobody wants us to be free. They don't want us to catch on to the real truth, right? Because if you just got a bunch of Jesus followers that don't need to go to church, well, that's a big business that's going to go under, isn't it? Because think about those conventions people go to, all the money they pay for them, and, the mega churches, the revenue that they're bringing in, right? Like the salaries that those, mega church pastors are making. It's not what Jesus was here for. And that's not what he was about. And honestly, if Jesus came back, I think a lot of modern Christians would be surprised that he would be pretty displeased and he wouldn't be impressed, right? So he would not be saying when are we going to brunch after this? Not into it. So people are seeing past that now. And so they're starting to wake up and they're starting to see, I don't want to spend my life chasing after another raise and another nice car and another this and that, because it never satisfies. I want something of meaning. So we have the acquisition here with the Eight of Cups. And the Eight of Cups is about moving on from the current status quo, because we have a longing in our heart for something more deeper, more fulfilling, more meaningful. And so I think that people are really waking up to that. They're starting to understand, oh, what's important in life is not all the crap that we're accumulating. You know, at the end of the day, what is going to give you more joy is having a simple meal with people that you love. Sit around a campfire, right? Sit around a fire pit and actually be in each other's company. One thing I really appreciated about my sister's dinner party the other night, I looked around and I noticed, I was like, you guys, we're doing really good. Like, no, not a single person has their phone out here. Not one person has looked at their phone, brought it outside even. I haven't seen one phone. In fact, we were all talking about things and everybody was like, oh, you'll have to remind me of that when we go inside, because I didn't even bring my stuff outside. It was so nice. And just being in the company of people and sharing time together was so nourishing, right? And so nothing can really replace that. And then too, it's like the materialistic nature of organized religion and in some senses in the church, it's like people are seeing past that too, right? They're like, I really like the new Pope, I gotta say. And he was just talking about today, or I saw a clip of one of his recent masses, and he was like, there is no, he was talking about the same thing. It's like Jesus's ministry was completely focused and devoted and centered around people that were in poverty. Or maybe it wasn't the Pope, it was like one of the cardinals or whatever, but he was going to, like, his point was he was going into this, like, this poor village. He was like, you want to know where Jesus is? He's not with the wealthy, in the midst of wealth and power and credits and credibility. He's with humble people, the poor of in spirit, not necessarily downtrodden, or it's not that he prefers people to be impoverished, but the thing is that when people aren't so preoccupied and like holding on to everything that is theirs, they have the freedom to be more authentic in their life, right? How many people are afraid to be seen saying anything wrong right now because they are afraid that they'll lose followers or that they'll lose their this or that, right? It's like you are enslaved by your possessions at that point. And I understand the feeling, because I mean, yeah, there are some times now where I'm like, wow, we're living in times where like you don't know who's watching and who's listening, and there's all this surveillance and that kind of scares me sometimes. And then I have to remind myself, well, that's exactly what they want. They want people to be scared, so they will just shrink away into darkness and fall into despair and just give up and just let them take over and do whatever they want. They don't want people, caring about one another and building community and taking care of each other. They want us to be in a state of desperation and fear, because then they can control us easier that way. So this cardinal, he's making this point. He's like, you will find Jesus, like the Beatitudes, like blessed are the poor, the meek, And so there's this cardinal is having, or I don't know the hierarchy necessarily of the Catholic Church, but he looked like a high up priest, and he was telling this point to camera, but then it was cross-cutting to this footage of him going into what appeared to be a South American village. And it was like this was a poor village, but all the people, like, they ran out to meet him, and they were so excited that he was there visiting them, and they were, like elated as if he were Taylor Swift, and that probably wouldn't happen with spoiled people, but those people have their values in the right place, and they recognize, like, oh, wow, one of our spiritual leaders, our sages, is here, and that was exciting. That was, and I thought I could see, like that in our reading today. It made so much sense to me. And so, with all the powers that be in the world, like there are trillions of dollars being spent to beat people's spirits into submission, into despair, just trying to control us. But we're starting to see through it. And this King of Swords here has mastered the mind over matter, and they've mastered their consciousness so that their thoughts cannot be controlled. Their thoughts cannot be manipulated. What they think is not just steered by an advertisement or a news story. Even it's like, okay, people are starting to ask questions. Okay, who's behind that news channel? Who funds this? Like, what would their motive be when they're dressing up this language to make something sound so great? It usually isn't. Like, so we're starting to figure out, and we're starting to see through, the illusion. And so we're also starting to have enough practice with trying to cultivate our thoughts and our consciousness that we are having more self-control. And that we're starting to understand that is really ultimately where we're going to start cultivating that inner peace, is having sovereignty over our mind, having sovereignty over our consciousness, not letting people get in there and ruin our day, right? I was just watching something this morning about, it was a Jewish person talking about how, it was a rabbi talking about one of his people who had confided in him that they were having a hard time forgiving, and they felt so angry about the Holocaust that they couldn't even enjoy themselves fully with all the evil that is out in the world. And I get that too, because sometimes lately I've been like, it's hard to have fun when I know people are suffering horribly. And I didn't even I had a really good time with my mom and my sister in Florida, and I didn't even post a lot of pictures or anything. And I thought about going back later and making a carousel about our trip, just in appreciation of it. But then I thought, is that insensitive to rub it in people's faces who might be following me, who are in places that are in absolute devastation? And I also thought, well, we can't also let the joy be robbed from us, because so many times you'll hear people that were survivors from the Holocaust say the most important thing is to hold on to your joy. That's all you have left at some point, and even watching the Palestinians, what is so heart-wrenching is that they can still find moments to have a sense of humor and be lighthearted and keep going and just keep making the best of the shittiest situation in recent history, if not, one of the worst things we've ever seen. So, and they're in the absolute pits of hell at this moment. And there are a troop of clowns that perform for children still, even though people have been displaced, and they're surrounded by rubble and bombs going off. These people understand the importance of bringing joy to children. And I think that for the clown, that probably is giving him a purpose, something to live for, And so if we let our joy go, then we've wasted our daylight hours, our living time here, which is temporary. So it's again, I always say this, but being a true spiritual person, being a mystic, almost requires that we're able to hold a paradox, and we can hold suffering in one hand and joy in the other. And we have to. There's not a moment without something else, some breaking news that is like, oh my God. But anyway, so the rabbi was telling this man, he's like, look, these people stole your past. You can't let them steal your future. And that has stuck with me all day. It's like these people are stealing and taking whatever they can, but we can't let them take our spirit, and we can't let them take our hearts, and we can't let them take our future, and we can't let them take our present either. And so we have to find ways to be fully present for all of it, and take moments where we unplug and we refresh ourselves. And then we get out there and we're spiritual soldiers again, bringing the light into the world, overcoming darkness. Where there is darkness, you see darkness, all right, then add so much light, so much help, so much goodness, so much love that it overpowers that darkness, that it nullifies it completely. We want to transmute evil forever and ever and ever, you know? And so love is contagious. And the light, once it's shined, it obliterates the darkness. Once people see, they can't unsee. They can't go back to thinking, they can't go back to living in denial because they know that they're lying to themselves and it eats them up. And so once we reveal that light, it's like, you know, once you have a taste of, like, for instance, I was talking to this girl at the dinner party about one of the things that I like about the Kabbalah Center is that they are deeply spiritual, you know, but they're not condemning of anyone. They're not like up in anybody's face about any sin at all, because they know that eventually, once their consciousness shifts, they won't have a desire for those things that just bring chaos and suffering. They'll see through they'll peek behind the curtain of their own bullshit, and then they're going to be like, oh, what am I doing? And then that's when you're free. That's when you're delivered and you don't need to go back, you know? So all that to say, we are here. We are becoming more sovereign over ourselves and less impressionable and less gullible, less we're not believing the illusion anymore. Let's just put it that way. So we've shined the light. The light is coming in, the light of illumination. I always like to think of it this way. People are obsessed with the rapture, the tribulation, revelation. And I always put it this way. We're not going to get suddenly snapped out of our own mess. That's not how it works. We're here to play our part in this too. And we were supposed to be stewards of the garden. And so we have to correct our tikkun olam, which is our collective soul has to fix and repair the darkness and the damage that we've allowed ourselves to channel into the world through human beings, right? There's no non-physical entity forcing things to happen. When evil is done in the world, it is by physical hands. And so it is up to us to go back and repair and bring light and love where there has been darkness. And so we don't get out of that scot-free. Yes, we can receive Christ into our heart, and then, you know, the salvation is in that. But I think people think that that's just like you buy a ticket and then you're done. And you got a ticket into heaven and Jesus will save me. Jesus will help me. Jesus will change it. But they don't take responsibility for their own transformation. And I think that it is, we are co-creators. And so it's not just a one-sided relationship. What are we bringing to the picture? How are we serving God? How are we using our rented body sleeve for God, for this world, for others, right? So back to the rapture, revelation, and tribulation. I always say the only rapture that is going to happen is when you go through tribulations, you have revelations, and then you find the rapture happens within you. When you're released from the illusion, when you're released from the dark hold of that fear and that lack and that doubt and suffering that illusion, then you finally have the rapture of inner peace. And then you think, okay, everything in this world will fall away. It'll crumble. It's got a shelf life. Me, you, everything we see, right? But what we awaken in our spirit and in our soul and what Christ reveals through us in this life, it will never go away. And so when we die, it's almost like waking up from a dream, almost like waking up from a nightmare. And we're so scared. We're so scared of it. But if we could just see that on the other side of this, everybody else is waiting. They're like, we're going to catch you. We're going to catch you. We're like, I don't want to die. I want to hold on. I want to hold on. And then it's like we croak, and then we're like, everybody catches us on the other side, and they're like, ha 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 ha. Yeah, you were so scared. You were so scared. And then you're like, oh my God, everything's fine now. I'm eternal. Like nothing can harm you as an eternal being, right? And nothing can be, the light you reveal in this world, it cannot be taken, you know? And so that's why when we talk about things of eternal value, it literally is like when you have a change of heart, when you change your mind, when you share a moment with someone where you help them change their heart or their mind, or when you share true, authentic love or companionship between someone or solidarity, you make someone feel respected and loved and cherished, and you show them that human dignity. That is eternal. Those are eternal things that you have done there, you know? And so that's what is truly of value. So that is how we defeat Satan. Satan is always trying to steal our higher purpose from us. He's trying to steal our higher destiny. He's trying to steal our ability to reveal our full potential in this world as a vessel of creativity and sharing and beauty and love for the world, love for each other. The devil's trying to steal that all the time. But you know what? It's up to us, because that's what the rules of the game are. You know, the adversary has a job, and it is a job appointed by the God in heaven himself. And this is basically our prosecutor. The prosecutor wants to he's keeping an account, and he's taking you to court, and he's always there, never forgetting, never letting any detail slip about every wrongdoing that we've done. However, every challenge that we overcome, every time we best that Satan, we reveal that light within us, and we tip those scales. And the more righteous of a person you are, not like self-righteous, but true, like a true Sadiq, like someone who genuinely has a heart for others and wants to do good and wants to become like God. Not in that weird perverse way where people are like, they want to play God and they want to tell everybody like whose destiny is what, and I'm owed this because of this, and I'm in control, and you know, I'm going to tell you how to live. Not that kind of God. But when we become vessels of unconditional love, unconditional sharing, creator consciousness versus destroyer consciousness, cause consciousness versus effect consciousness, then we become more like the creator, and then we become vessels that do good in the world, and people are lifted up around us by our lifting up. So we are revealing light every time we best that devil. So it's always a challenge. You know, they say new level, new devil, because no matter what, that adversary is going to be on your ass, right? What does it say? Like fear crouches at the door, or like evil's always crouching at the door, meaning that any little gap in your consciousness, the devil is waiting. The adversary, the opponent, the Satan is waiting to get in there and pull your strings. Wherever your vulnerabilities are, that's the game for you. That's how the Satan is going to come in and try to trip you up. And so the best way to get the cheat codes to get to your next level is to get super aware of where your vulnerabilities are, right? Are you, do you have like a need for people to look up to you and respect you? Do you want to be, like, are you looking for that promotion because your parents put all this pressure on you? And so you feel like you've got to, do whatever you can to like perform at work. Like when you have those things that hold on to you, they bind you and you're a slave to that consciousness, that attitude. But if you can break those chains and shackles and you're just like, you know what? God has a plan for me. I want God's plan. It's going to be the most fulfilling for me anyway. I want to be in alignment with with living with purpose, right? And that's what I value. I don't care about the outside, people impressed with me from the outside, or if I have everything that people think I should, you become free from that comparison trap. And that comparison trap will rob you of everything, because it'll rob you of your authenticity, because you'll always be performing to be impressive to someone and you'll never be yourself. And then you'll feel empty, and then you'll feel like you've abandoned yourself and you've rejected yourself. And then you feel like no one else can see you because you're invisible. You haven't revealed yourself to anyone. So it feels lonely and it feels like you've been rejected and you've been abandoned, and you feel like you've been rejected and abandoned by everyone, but they've never really seen you because you were the first person to reject and abandon yourself, because you just wanted to people please and you wanted the material outer things, but it left you hungry inside. And I know I'm saying you a lot, so I'm not talking to you exactly. Like we're all in this together, right? And I mean, obviously if you have interest in these things on this channel, you're probably not on the extreme end of the spectrum here. I mean, I'm always talking about, people are on a spectrum of whatever. And so I think that if you are here, at least you probably care, and you're probably hopefully willing to look at the self. I would think if you just wanted some entertainment from a tarot reader, there are other channels that are easier to watch, right? They're more entertaining, they're more gossipy, but that's not us, right? We want that spiritual, that good stuff, right? We really want the real thing, and we want to connect. We want to have our own relationship with God. We want to be able to tap into our own intuition and be led by Holy Spirit. And we want to be more like Jesus and Dolly Parton. All right. I think I'm just going to leave off with that tonight. But yeah, I hope that y'all have a good weekend and get you some sacred rest. Have yourself a Shabbat. If you can, let go and put it down and surrender, right? Because sometimes not doing it's not sometimes, well, if you're not ever doing, then that's lazy. But sometimes you have to stop pushing and stop doing and just be, and just relax and be at rest and be in stillness. And that God did that on the seventh day, and we observe that as well. When we we can't do that, we're not like God at all, because we can't rest. We have the fear of losing, right? But when we can stop and rest, that says, I trust God's going to make sure everything's taken care of. Not everything is on my shoulders, and my value is not measured by my output. All right. Love y'all. Ciao, peace, prayers for all the people suffering on earth, tithes to people in places that are in famine. Most people now, with the world being so interconnected, they have PayPals, they have links that you can donate directly. I know sometimes it feels like when you donate to a charity, you wonder like how much of a percentage actually gets to the person. But honestly, now you can probably go seeking people out and find their profile and, be a kind of an angel for them. I know that Charity Water, I really like them as far as just like an organization. They dig wells, water wells in like third world countries that aren't fully developed. And this helps like young girls not have to walk 7-8 hours every day to go get like huge things of water that are heavy that they have to carry back, like, you know, through dangerous territory. So that's a huge thing. That's something that keeps giving and giving and giving, and it's a legacy, right? So, you know, there are many really good charitable organizations that give 100% of the donations. I know MATW is a Muslim-run organization, and they give to all kinds of places that are in need. And so theirs is also a 100% donation guarantee. But yeah, I mean, it's something that gives me a sense of inner peace when I have been able to do that. Think about like all the people that have to do GoFundMes because they have like a sudden surgery that comes up or something like that. I mean, you can make a big difference, and I think it's very meaningful to people. I remember I had this guy that used to work at my restaurant, or not my restaurant, but the restaurant that I work at. Recently, I saw on his social media that he had moved away. He wasn't at our restaurant anymore. He's in a different city, and he had a sudden like heart surgery or something that he had to have. And I can't imagine the shape that I would be in financially if I had something like that happen. It would be catastrophic. And I made the biggest donation I could, but it wasn't a lot. And I felt heartbroken because the donation, like, you know how like it'll tell you like, oh, congratulations, you're the biggest donor. And I'm like, that's so sad to me that like what little I could give was the biggest thing that he'd received, and he hadn't really had a lot of donations. And so he was a very sweet person and a hard worker, and I have nothing but kind and good things to say about him. And it just kind of broke my heart. And I really hoped that it was just because maybe it was, you know, it hadn't circulated a lot yet. But same thing with my friend who was widowed earlier in the year, or like late last fall. She lost her husband, and there was a GoFundMe that her group of friends started for her, and I didn't get to go to the funeral, but I donated to the GoFundMe, and she made it a point to bring it up. Like, she was like, oh my gosh, thank you for the donation that you gave me, which made me think like, she's surrounded by people that are working professionals, attorneys and things. Like, surely that I wasn't like the impoverished waitress wasn't the biggest donor to her thing, right? So you would be surprised at how your small contribution can do so much for someone in their heart. And that's what really counts. So remember the story of the woman in the Bible. I don't know the details, so I'm a hypocrite telling you to remember the story. But remember the woman who all she had was like the 2 coins to tithe. And it was like the equivalent of like only having like 2 pennies to give. But she gave those, and I can't remember like how the story turned out, but it was like, it was meaningful, even though that was all she had, because she had so little. Her donation, her tithe, meant so much more in the upper realms, because it wasn't like she just had it to give. It was actually a sacrificial gift. It was sacrificial love. So don't think that just because you don't have a lot, that it's not worth it, because it is. And it's worth it. The upper realms can see it. And that reminds me that I need to tithe for this week. I didn't get to because I was so busy with all the fasting and everything and the ritualing that I didn't get to do that today. So that's one thing that I need to catch up on quickly. All right, you all. Well, I will see y'all tomorrow night for Secret Teachings of Jesus, our Saturday night secret sermon. And we are getting into the meat of the Gospel of Mary, which is funny. I was noticing that a lot of people are talking about the Gospel of Mary these days, and they're kind of dancing around the Gospel of Mary, and they're talking about Mary, and they're speculating on all these romantic, ideas about Mary, but they're not really sharing her gospel. so much. They're picking like 2 lines out of it. So even though there's a lot of people talking about it, y'all, we got a good thing going here. So we're gonna get into it. So tomorrow night, and we're back on normal schedule. The holidays are over, so I'm kind of back to my normal routine. So I've kind of like really missed our routine together. I do miss our schedule when I'm not when things are disrupted. So looking forward to it. I'm getting a Charlie horse in my inner thigh. Bye.